Hi there. Ever try to text a friend while also watching TV? That's your working memory in action, juggling more than one thing at a time. Today, we'll explore how working memory goes beyond a simple short-term box. We'll also see how deeper thinking and different memory types all fit together. Let's dive in. In our last video, we looked at a model that treats memory like a straight path, from sensory input to short-term, then long-term, with rehearsal in between. That's helpful, but real life is more dynamic. We switch tasks, handle images and words together, and use old knowledge to make sense of new info. Today we'll focus on a model called Working Memory by Baddeley and Hitch, learn about how deep processing matters, and see Tulving's view on different memory types. Along the way, we'll dig into details like the episodic buffer, semantic memory, and the central executive system. What's one situation where you balanced lots of info at once? Maybe cooking while checking a recipe, texting and talking? Share below. Think of short-term memory as a busy desk. You don't just hold papers, you shift them, highlight key parts, or toss some out. That's working memory. It's active, not just a waiting room. This idea changed how psychologists see short-term storage. The central executive is like the boss. It decides which tasks to focus on, how to divide resources, and when to switch. It can't handle too much at once, though. There's a limit to how many tasks we can juggle. It manages attention, coordinates info from other systems, and chooses how we handle data. We use it when we plan, solve problems, or combine new info with old knowledge. This loop deals with verbal or auditory information. If you repeat words in your mind, that's the phonological loop. It has two parts: a store that briefly holds sounds and a rehearsal process, like a voice in your head, that keeps the information alive. This is why repeating a phone number can help you remember it. This part handles visual and spatial details. Think of rotating a puzzle piece in your mind, or picturing how to rearrange furniture. That's the Visuospatial Sketchpad at work, storing shapes, spaces, and images. If you have to recall a path you walked earlier, you use the sketchpad to mentally retrace it. Baddeley added the episodic buffer later. It blends information from the loop, the sketchpad, and your long-term memory, making a single scene. So if you're solving a math problem, you might hold numbers in your phonological loop while picturing a diagram in your sketchpad, and then the episodic buffer ties it all together. Let's evaluate the pros and cons of the episodic buffer. First, the pros. The episodic buffer explains how we handle multiple tasks. For example, listening to music while writing. It's backed by experiments. Dual task tests show we get confused if tasks tap the same system. Now the cons. The central executive is still a bit mysterious. It's hard to measure exactly. Plus, the model evolves as new data appear. Still, this approach helps us see why doing two verbal tasks at once is harder than doing a verbal and a visual task together. They tap the same or different systems. Next, let's look at levels of processing from Craik and Lockhart. They said, how deeply you think about something matters for memory. Shallow means focusing on surface details, like if a word's in caps. Deep means thinking about meaning or linking it to your life. The deeper you go, the better you remember. Simple glances fade fast, but connecting information to personal stories or definitions helps it stick. If you're studying, just rereading notes might be shallow, but if you test yourself or form examples, you go deep. That deeper route leads to stronger, longer-lasting memory. Tulving said long-term memory isn't just one big box. He divided it into episodic memory, personal stories like your last birthday or a vacation, semantic memory, general facts and knowledge, capital of Italy or how many days in a year, procedural memory, skills you do like typing or riding a bike. Tulving's work helps explain why you can forget a friend's name, an episodic detail, but still remember how to tie your shoes, a procedural skill. Different brain areas support these memory types. So, let's compare. Multi-store, a simple path, sensory to short-term to long-term, working memory. Short-term is an active system with loops, sketchpads, and a buffer. Levels of processing. Focus on how deeply you handle information. Tulving highlights different memory folders. Episodic, semantic, procedural. All give us a bigger view of how memory works. Working memory shows us how we juggle tasks now. Levels of processing show that deeper thought leads to stronger recall. Tulving highlights that memories can be personal or general knowledge or skills. Working memory ties into broader cognitive areas, attention, perception, and linkages to long-term memory. The central executive is the bosses of attention. When tasks come in, some visual, some verbal, it decides how we juggle them. Brain-wise, the prefrontal cortex is important for control and planning. The parietal cortex helps with tasks like mental math or spatial tasks. The hippocampus works with forming new memories. So, if you're learning new words, your loop might store them short-term, while your hippocampus helps shift them into long-term memory for the future. Baddeley calls the Phonological Loop and Visuospatial Sketchpad slave systems. They do the storing of sounds and visuals. The central executive directs them, telling them what to focus on or ignore. If it's a verbal task, like repeating words, the loop is busy. If it's a visual puzzle, the sketchpad does the heavy lifting. The episodic buffer can link it all together, letting you combine pictures, sounds, and knowledge from long-term memory into one scene. Fun fact: the central executive capacity is tricky to measure. We know it's limited, but we're not sure exactly how much it can handle. That's why we get overloaded sometimes, like when too many tasks come at once. Semantic memory is about general facts, like the meaning of words, or that Paris is in France. We often rely on working memory to recall these facts on the spot. When you solve a riddle, you might hold the puzzle words in the loop and look up some known fact in your semantic memory. Then the episodic buffer merges them so you can see the big picture. If you have trouble with semantic memory, like certain kinds of brain damage or a condition called category-specific deficit, you might not recall certain groups of words or concepts well. That shows how deeply working memory ties to our knowledge base. Studies using brain scans show different areas light up for verbal tasks versus visual tasks. That supports the idea of separate loops. Also, dual task studies show we do poorly if two tasks tap the same system at once. Experiments in the Journal of Experimental Psychology or other academic sources back up these claims, telling us the model's not just guesswork. Yet, we still have more to learn, especially about how the central executive truly manages everything. Working memory matters for daily tasks. Following instructions, you hold steps in mind while you do them. Learning. If working memory is weak, it's harder to store new info. ADHD or other issues. Deficits in working memory can mean trouble staying on track. Training. Some programs claim to boost working memory. Simple tasks, like repeating sequences or doing mental math, might help, but we need more research to see how long changes last. Semantic tasks. We rely on working memory and semantic knowledge together for reading comprehension, problem solving, and so on. For example, reading a paragraph might involve the loop for the words, the sketchpad for any images, and the central executive to integrate meaning. How can we get better at working memory? Rehearsal and chunking group items into small sets like phone numbers in 3 to 4 digit chunks. Limit distractions. If you're focusing, close unneeded tabs or turn off your phone. Train. Some apps have memory games. They might boost certain skills, though the extent is debated. Also, paying attention to emotional load or stress can help. High stress can overload the system, so staying calm can keep your memory desk clearer. So the working memory model gives us a detailed look at how short-term storage is active, with a central boss, loops for sounds, a sketchpad for visuals, and a buffer that blends it all. We also saw how deep thinking, or levels of processing, matters, and how Tulving's different memory types, episodic, semantic, procedural, fit into the big picture. I hope this gives you a clearer view of how your mind handles tasks, words, images, and knowledge all at once. If you enjoyed this, like and subscribe, and comment with any memory challenges or tips you have. Thanks so much for watching, and remember, memory is more than a short conveyor belt. It's a living workspace in your mind.